Tetzaveh, page 166, bottom paragraph. Okay, the Alter Rebbe is explaining the tzitz, and the way the tzitz is it's the revelation of Kodesh Le, the way Kedusha comes down and the Yud Kevavke coming down into the world, and that's why the current word on his forehead, because that's also the concept of Metzach. That's the level of intellect that he's in the middle of explaining now. And he says, that's bitachtav b'tuche chesam, to seal it, and he says that's the level of Torah. Now what is a seal? A seal is not letters, but not like spoken or thought letters. It actually comes into something physical. The same thing, Torah is something that comes into the physical world. It comes into the physical world, but at the same time it's one Kedusha with Hashem. And that's what he says, Vayikra Havaya Havaya. What's the double Havaya? The calling of the revealing of the Yud Gimel Midas Harachman. Okay, that's where we're here now. U'bir Inyan HaMetzah, these few lines we learned already. U'bir Inyan HaMetzah, the Inyan of the forehead, that the Torah emphasizes by the tzitz. Boya mitzchay tami. It should be on his forehead. K'mei derech mashu b'gashmis. Sheyesh b'tach chalolit gagalta klas mein Chabad. There's three chambers in their brain, which is the level of Chochmah, Bina, and Das. And then you have Gogalta, the Chafya Amoicha. Then you have the level of the skull that covers the head. So the same thing you have in Ruchnius, Ki Amoicha Neim Chabad. Chochmah, Bina, Das is the intellect. Vadas, V'akeich HaMekasher is Chochmah, Bina. What is the level of Das? This is what we're up to now. What is the level of Das that connects the Chochmah and Bina, Lias Tkua, to be ingrained, established, B'chezik with strength, Bal Yimei, that it shouldn't move. The Alter Rebbe in Perek Gimel of Tanya explains, what is Chochmah, Bina, and Das? Chochmah means the initial spark, Bina is the broadening of it, understanding. So what is Das? How does Das come into the picture? So the Alter Rebbe says that Das comes from the word Va'adam Yoda as Chava. Simply means who is intimate with Chava. What does Yoda mean? Das means binding yourself. In other words, you have to connect to the subject matter. Over there, the Alter Rebbe says that if, without Das, you don't give birth to true midas, which means midas, the Rebbe explains what the Alter Rebbe means, is that the midas don't last. In other words, like this. You can understand something, but it's not you. It's not subjective. It's not one with you. It's, you're looking at it from an outsider. In other words, you can learn about morals and be immoral. You can learn about medicine, you be unhealthy. I mean, one thing is nothing that doesn't take away from the level of Chochmah and Bina. You could be a brilliant doctor, can know all about medicine, give lectures on medicine, but you don't live like that. Which means it doesn't affect you, it doesn't permeate you because you're not bound to it. When you're bound to it, it means that you become one. So the Alter Rebbe says, what's Das over here? The Alter Rebbe says, Das is what?
There are people who come from the old country, from Iran. They don't study, they don't, but when they daven, the tefillah, the emunah is extremely, it's like fire.
That's because of the Ava Hativis, the natural instinctive love that they have. Because if you don't meditate, you can't give birth to a revealed level of love. And even with that, he says, you can meditate, and it can turn you on, midas-wise, but nevertheless, it doesn't last. Why? Because you didn't become one with it. And it says, which means that when you finish in your mind intellectually the greatness of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, then then your nefesh will be bound to Hashem. Das means his kashrus v'ischabrus. That says in Tanya, meaning Das is taking the subject, intellectual subject matter, and becoming one with it. Then you create real midas that you really feel. In the intellect of Chabad, Shamogili, Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Like the Alter Rebbe said earlier, and the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Elokus reveals itself in the level of Chochmah. Because Chochmah is bittul. Korach ma. So where can Elokus? And then, in fact, in the Alter Rebbe, in Hagar and Tanya says, Shehu levadahu v'nzelosi v'zehu madreges ha-chochma. That's the level of chochma. Chochma is complete bittul to Hashem. Shehu levadahu v'ein zelosi. There's nothing else but Hashem. Okay, in other words, when you meditate into the greatness of Hashem, the way we say Baruch Shama, Hashem said, and it became a world. And Hashem is one, everything is Elokus. And Yishtabach, Shimcha, all those parts of davening, then Kachu is Gash, Sadas. So it is the connection of Das. Begilui Otzim. With a very powerful desire and wanting to be connected. Okay? So there's intellect that really want with Das, because Chachma and Bina and Das are both in the head. So you can have the three compartments. You can have Chachma, you can have Bina, you can have Das. The problem is there's a skull blocking it. And that doesn't allow the intellect to come down.
What's the blockage, Rabbi? What's
the skull. There's a skull that covers the head. And corresponding with das, which is the metzach, which is kisi ala das, lahalam gili adas viskashus. And therefore, this is against, it blocks the level of das, the skull blocks the level of das from coming into practical midas. And therefore, right after davening, it's goodbye all the all the love and the fear of Hashem, because it's not, there's lacking das, or das is covered. And therefore, what happens, you have to daven again. In other words, a person daven shachris to get all stimulated. So why do you have to daven mincha again? The answer is because the stimulation of Shachris died, and now you got to do it again at Mincha time, and then Ma'ariv time, and so on. You need to daven every day, the Eder is to again awaken the love. It has to be, every day has to be Torah mitzvahs. Chazal say, every day should be new. What does it mean new? To renew lechadish is to renew the love. Because if something's new, people get all excited about it. They love it. You ever watch a kid the first time he puts on tefillin, he's all excited. Then what happens 5 years later, who knows? So every time you have to renew, to reveal the love. Therefore, because there's continuous creation. If there's continuous creation, there's continuous recreating of the Ahava. So therefore it needs to be stimulated. Why? Because there's a blockage. So he says now, and when the guy after davening, this guy goes to his vineyard, this guy goes to his business, this guy goes to his whatever. Then you could be from the people that fall. Then after davening, you go out into the world, so then you fall prey to all the worldly desires, which is the level of yesh, not bittul. Like the Pasuk says, Tetzaveh Hashem, it's an abomination of Hashem, kol geva leiv, all the haughty people is an abomination to Hashem. Even the external level, which is our anhagas alavushim, which are the garments, meaning thought, speech, and action. Like the Gemara says in Saita, Hashem says, I cannot coexist with a haughty person. Why? It's very simple. The guy's so full of himself, there's no room for God. So Hashem only rests on something which is bit. So what happens? A guy davens properly. He's awake, Baruch Shama Vayalom, Yishtabach, I mean, he's really stimulated. The problem is, after davening, you go back into the real world, and all of a sudden, it's not real anymore. Then you have the worldly desires that you want, I want. The I gets in the way of having the bittul to Hashem. So therefore you need to do it again, and again, and again, until you die. It says simply the pasuk means there's no understanding of Elokus in the earth. But it means like this, in Oretz, in earthly things, there's no das Elokim. There's no connection to Elokus, because you're bound to world. World and godliness are two opposites. You can't have it both ways. You can't have binding to world and simultaneously binding to Elokus, because it's two opposites. You can only have what? What were you saying?
It's to elevate world. The whole point is to elevate world.
The point is to elevate world, not to fall prey to world.
Right.
Okay, no. So that's the whole point over here. He says that's the level. There's no, because he says when a person is bound, indulged in worldly things, then you can't be connected to Hashem. Like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya about the Beinani. Okay, Elokus and evil world are two opposites. The more you love Elokus, the more you hate world. The less you hate world means the less you love Elokus. That's the bottom line. And that's how he explains the difference between Tzaddik Gomer and Tzaddik Sheina Gomer. Tzaddik Gomer means not only did he kill the Yetzer Hara, he transformed it to Kedusha. Therefore he's called Tzaddik V'Tovlei. He has only good. A guy who killed the Yetzer Hara, but he didn't transform it to Kedusha, is still connected to evil. Why is he? Because he's Tzaddik She'eina Gomer, meaning his love to Hashem is not complete, then he's called Tzaddik V'Ra'ulei, he still has Ra. Because the mamish two opposites. So he says, Akol Zeh B'chinas Akum Shenikru Kach Shem Umeis Mekareres L'chol Inyaniyim L'Hazeh. Okay? That's the worldly and Goyishkeit. But She'en Kem B'chinas Yisrael. But if you're a Yid, so how do you deal with world and Elokus at the same time? He says that's what the Chachamim Zal in Pirkei Avos are saying, Malach T'cha Arai, make your work temporary, meaning Tofel Levad secondary, inferior, in Keridus, in coldness, like as if a demon forced you to do it. He says, and therefore the Rebbe explains, in many times when the Mishnah says, Yegia kapecha kiseichel, the work of your hand, you should eat, then you'll be good. He says, kapecha v'lei reishecha. The Mishnah doesn't say the effort of your head. The effort of your hands. Meaning like this, of course, when you're in business, you need to use your head. But the question is, what is your goal? Is it the business or living like a Jew? So say, Yegia kapecha v'lei reishecha. You should be the effort of your head, of your hands, but your head, the goal should be in Kedusha. It doesn't mean you don't use your head for business. You got to make it a business. Or like a guy had a galoshes or boots. And they got Tzemach Tzedek had the boot factory. And he came into the Tzemach Tzedek, and Tzemach Tzedek admonished him. He said, I've always seen feet in a boot. But a head in a boot that I never saw. He told him your whole head's in your business. Your head is in the not your feet are in the boots. Your head's in the boots. So he says then a person could be then you talk elevate world. Then it's not a contradiction. You could be in the business world, but you understand and you live not for that but for Elokus. And that's what the pasuk says about the tzitz. It should be on the forehead of Aaron, meaning that even after Shegam Acharei Tefillah, even after davening, Shechalef as Veiver so Ava, when the Ava of meditation ceases to be, it stops. It still remains a mark on the forehead, which normally blocks the Ava, the intellect, because the skull blocks it. What happens, this causes that it remains permanently. This mark remains on the forehead, meaning the forehead doesn't block anymore and to allow it.
The skull blocks, the throat blocks, the heart blocks. The throat. You get the from the throat.
So we are plumbers. Unstopping the blockage.
What about the Gevurah?
That's what he says. When you take the davening into the world, yeah, like the chassid that made the calculations, and then he drew the line and he wrote, Einod Movade. It wasn't to be cute. That's where he was at. There was a chassid, I didn't think about Rebbe's time, whatever, that, in the roads were muddy in Russia. There was blotte in the winter, right? If it didn't freeze up. So there was this chassid, he was sitting, and he didn't even realize, he was sitting in the mud in the street, and he was meditating in Chassidus. What happened was, he was walking in the street, all of a sudden he got this idea of Chassidus, of meditating into godliness, and he sat down in the mud. He didn't realize, he was sitting in the mud, meditating in Chassidus. By the way, there are Yidden today that do this. Not too many, but it's possible to do. Huh?
Happens 2 seconds in the middle of davening, maybe with your life.
If you could think business during davening, why can't you think of davening in the middle of business? Davening meaning think about the Eibishter. They tell a story. A guy came to shul once in the morning. The shachar is extremely depressed. So somebody said to him, what happened? He said, I had a terrible dream. Mamish, a terrible dream. The guy says, tell me your dream. He can't. Anyway, the guy finally convinced him to tell him the dream. He said, what was the dream? He dreamt that God died. So the chassid said to him, you know what, you probably thought about it during the day, so that's what you dreamt at night. He said, no, you can't. I haven't thought about God for ages. He couldn't dream God died. You know what I mean? So he says, what? It's true.
How does he daven if he doesn't?
It's. Let me ask you a question. How is it possible people daven, then later they don't remember, did I daven or not? Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it happened. A guy I don't remember if I benched or not. How can you not remember? If you benched properly, then you would know if you benched or not. Sometimes.
Certain brachot you don't remember. I don't think.
You know what? It's like when a person first learns how to drive, afterwards it comes subconscious. You don't even remember what you're doing, right? And drive, it just comes naturally. So by a lot of people, you daven naturally. You don't remember what did I do? Didn't I do it? So that's exactly what it is. A person can daven and think about themselves instead of God.
But then with all these different impulses every second coming in, it's a challenge to focus.
It is. It is. First of all, speak for yourself. Nobody else here has these challenges. Number one. Number two, who says life is not a challenge? If life would not be a challenge, it wouldn't be worth living.
So the thing is to block yourself.
Forget even Yiddishkeit. Forget even Yiddishkeit. Intellectuals, people that are intellectuals, are not into the. You find the big scientists and the big intellectuals, yeah. They lived like schleppers, they didn't care about Gashmistic things. They just didn't care about it. They're into something much more important. Okay? A guy's interested in Gashmis and all that, how do you expect him to be? So life is a challenge. But Hashem gives us this ability to overcome the challenges. And then when the person overcomes the challenges, they become from creation creator, from finite infinite, and therefore the accomplishment is infinitely greater than making another $1 million. No, that's the fact. Adam la'amal yivaled la'avdol l'shamar, all the things. A person was born to work. Eved. Eved is not easy work. If it's enjoyable, it's not avdus. Eved means when it's a challenge. The whole purpose of life is a challenge. Nes, nisayon, right?
Yes.
Okay. Those are the three words from Nes. Miracle, nisayon, banner, right? These are all three levels of what life's all about.
Whatever makes it, it's not that you have to block yourself from these impulses. The shita is to stay within this world and elevate those impulses. That's.
Now, the Rebbe says in Tanya, you shouldn't be a shaita. He says, are you a shaita to think that I can elevate the evil thoughts and all that? Why? Because he says, you're a fool. You're all the way in the mud. You can elevate it. Come on, do me a favor. Okay? A Jew can elevate only the impulses of klipas neiga. The other impulses you have to get rid of. You can't elevate them. You have to negate them.
Even Kripa is not.
That klipas neiga could be elevated. Depends how you elevate it. Not in our terms, in his terms. So he says, this is the simplistic will. The davka beis to cling to Hashem. B'li emek is beinus. Like not in the depth of davening, like it is at the time of davening. In other words, what it means is the remnants of davenings, meditation, and awakening last with you to a certain extent for the duration of the day, that it impacts your day in a positive way. Because the way you made up your mind at the time of tefillah, that's the way you're going to live. Even though the powerful desire of Elokus, now you finish davening, right? Go away and leave after davening. So, but nevertheless, a mark of it is remaining. You could tell that the person davened. It should be the will and make the agreement of the heart. The dovka beyizbarach and melachtai are the tafel, that the work becomes secondary and inferior. The teirasi kvavi ikar. In other words, it doesn't mean, like it says, Rabbi Yechon says in the Gemara, halavai sheyispalel adam kolayim kulei. Halavai, a person should daven a whole day. Okay, now Rabbi Yechon didn't mean you should literally daven a whole day. Okay, you can say, Haidu, wait 10 minutes, Lashem, 10 minutes, Kiru, that's not what he means. It means halavai, a person should be in the level of davening a whole day. Davening means connection, binding, communion with Hashem. A person now, during the davening, that's when you get heated up. And then it's when the still remains, he's mentioned, we have time because we're almost done with the Maimon. We mentioned the story many times. The Rebbe Rashab, when he made the Yeshiva Temchat Tamimim, as the great geniuses of the world said, he turned the world back 50 years. He took brilliant heads, these Bachim were brilliant Bachim, and he made them such, as they would say today, the chnyaki, fanatics, that they said he turned the world back 50 years. So they asked him, in Temchat Tamimim, the Bachim were really fanatics, really. So they said to him, why do you have to make them so fanatic? You make them normal Jews. Why do you have to be, crazy? So the Rebbe Rashab gave him a mashal of the only mashal we have today is a matzah bakery. You have a matzah bakery. That ovens used to be like that. How did you heat up oven? You heat it up with coals, and then you heat it up, and then you pushed away the coals, and then you baked, or cooked. So he said like this: if you need 400 degrees to bake, let's say, you can't heat up the oven to 400 degrees. Why? Because the second you push away the coals, it goes down to 350, and you need 400. So how do you get the oven to bake at 400? You heat up the oven to 500, 450, whatever. And then when you push away the coals, then the oven stays warm enough to bake. He says when a Bachar leaves yeshiva and goes out into the world, they cool down. So he says, let's say, I'm paraphrasing, let's say to be a religious Jew, you need 400 degrees warmth. So he said, if I heat up the Bachar 400 degrees in yeshiva to be a normal Jew, then when they go out of yeshiva, they go down to 300. That's not enough to be a Chassidic Jew. In the yeshiva, you have to heat them up to 1,000 degrees. And then when they go out, hopefully they'll stay at 400. That's what he's talking exactly here. That the davening remained with a mark that the whole day a person is influenced by the davening. Obviously not the same level as davening, but enough of a warmth from before that it should last. And that's what he said. Could be constant. And that's what it says, on the forehead, meaning the level of which blocks Elokus, this level, the tzitz, which is the revelation of Elokus, should be higher than Yud Kevavke, meaning through this awakening from below, Isarusa the Leila becomes awakening from above. The Eder Ratzon Elyon, Raiva the Raiva, this will of wills, the highest level, is Galas Bechinas Havaya. I'm not the lower level of Yud Kevavke. The higher level of Yud Kevavke that he explained, which is Yud, the source of Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim, Shaidei Zahagilu Ratzon Elyon, Uneisi Oven HaKotchim Yisapcha. Then it forgives the sin of Kotchim, meaning when things and Kodesh is made Tameh or things like that in a spiritual sense. Okay, like it knows. It's known, she Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim. Racham V'chaniv V'neisi Oven comes from the level of Ratzon Elyon, right? Not Seichel Midas. Seichel Midas sins. How do you get forgiveness? By tapping into a deeper level, which is willpower. Hainuk Shiyagilu Ratzon Zeh, that this Ratzon of Elokus should be al Meitzach Aaron, okay? On the forehead of Aaron, meaning if it's only in the time of Tefillah, and then after Tefillah it dies, like he said, then it's not going to last the whole day. So meaning it has to be on the Meitzach, meaning on that level which blocks Elokus, meaning the rest of the day, it should be a mark. There should be a mark on the forehead for that level of Elokus to remain with the person the whole day. That's the level of the tzitz.
Wow.